All right. And now it has come time for our speaker, Sharon. She's going to share her experience, strength, and hope. Let's beam out a lot of white light and love and invite our higher powers to come and join us and to hear everything that Sharon has to offer. Sharon, you can take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Jeremiah. I want to thank all of you, Christina and Linda and Jeremiah, and for inviting me. I think this is so wonderful. I'm very excited that there's an events committee in Arizona. I think it's great. My name is Sharon, and I'm proudly codependent. And that's actually how I'm going to start, proudly. That's how I introduce myself. I've been in CODA for 11 and a half years, and I'll start with my family of origin and go the way up because I have a lot to share, and just bear with me. It's the first time that I've really shared in front of this many people. And it's funny because I'm on the events committee and I do speakers and workshops all the time. And I tell them, oh, no problem, just get up there and you're going to be great and you'll do a wonderful workshop. Well, now it's my turn. So I'm probably codependent. I started on March 1st, 2009. And I'll get to that when I started CODA, but I wanted to start my story like everybody else's with our family of origin, where the codependency started from the very beginning. I've been in my codependency long enough where I recognize my shortcomings, where they come from, and how I got them. So I was a family of 6, 2 boys, 2 girls. I have parents, and I was a fat kid. I had acne. And when I say I'm fat, I've had 150 extra pounds on me most of my life. And I had acne, not just little pimples. So I had to deal with that a lot. And when I was really young, I had to say, well, I had dysfunctional parents, just like everybody else. And my father was almost 42 when I was born. And my mom was 10 years younger than him. And it was just a very angry, pissed off family. I was codependent because I was taught at a very young age to cover my mom while she had boyfriends. She had a sexual addiction, and she used me to hide it from my father. So that's how early the codependency really started for me. And I had a younger brother that, since my parents were emotionally unattached, I had to take care of. Well, I was only a year and a half older than him, so I can't be too much responsible for the things that I had taught him. But it taught me to be codependent. And hiding this from my father was really tough because when I was young, I'd be stuck going to my friend's house and left there, so I wouldn't go home and get my mother busted. So I was angry. My father was very mad. I believe he always had known it, and he was angry and took out most of his abuse on my older brother. So even though we were all physically and emotionally abused, I watched my older brother get beat. And it affected me, no doubt. Even though I was daddy's favorite, I came from lying and cheating and abuse. So I was abusive and I was angry and I was mad. And that's what I was taught, how to hide things and hide my feelings and hide the truth. And let's see. So when I was little, nobody was really watching me. And I did some stupid things like I'm sure a lot of us had done. And I was 15, just about 16 years old, and my parents had left me 4 months. So how many of you at 15 and 16 was left 4 months? And what would you have done in that time? Well, I did have a lot of fun and realized I was brain dead. and lost my virginity over my 16th birthday. And that was because nobody was watching, and I just wanted to know what it was all about. And so that's what I did for myself. And I didn't even get a thrill out of it. It was just something that I did at 16. I had a sister and a cousin that had 16 birthday parties, and my brothers and all my male cousins were bar mitzvah. So we were Jewish, without the religion, without being taught, just knowing we were born Jewish. So we knew we were different. I used to go in and out of churches and sing in their choirs because they were happy, they were loving, I loved the stories, and I just couldn't tell my parents. So that's something I did behind my parents' back that was fun. I learned how to sneak to live life as a teenager, but not always being pretty smart. So when my parents came back after a month, they didn't really know anything, but because I acted out so bad and I was scared, what I did without my parents, it was like 3.5 years, I must have been 18, before I had another encounter with a boyfriend or a man, because I was afraid that I was pregnant at that age. Now today, I think maybe it isn't as scary, but with my father being 42 years difference, he would have disowned me. You didn't live with your boyfriends. You didn't get married when you were pregnant. So I lived with a whole generation gap missing, where most of my friends' parents were listening to the Beatles in the 50s. My parents were listening to opera. And we're in silent films. So I used to think my dad went to school in caves. That's how I felt so disconnected from the age. But my mom and my dad were completely separate from each other. My father was angry, pissed off. And I believe he always knew my mom was sleeping around because he'd call her names, like a whore and a slut, in front of her friends, in front of family. A lot of anger, a lot of insults. And my mama told me it was my dad's fault she was cheating. Well, why wouldn't I accept or believe that? I did. But in my teenage years, I was surrounded by lying and cheating. And that's where really my codependency destroyed my life later. So as I turned into going into high school, my parents came back. My dad was afraid. My mother was taking me too many places. I didn't realize that till Coda, what he was really afraid of. So when I was 16, he put my ass in beauty school when I was in high school. So 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, I went through high school to school, which I really hated. I didn't want to go to school. But I look back and say, damn, my dad was smart. He sure kept my ass busy, which I followed suit with my own kids later. And so I was going to school, and then I started cutting high school. I was barely cutting it through beauty school. I was very good. But I had a high school teacher tell me, you know what, you only have an IQ of 80. So right away I thought, well, damn, I'm stupid. But I used it to my benefit and thought, I don't need to go to school. I'm dumb anyway. So I go to beauty school and I started cutting high school. Now the reason I bring that up so many years later is I was caught. And when my father came in, I had 200 absence slips. I killed off every member of my family more than once. I had no members left. This one died, that one died. I had an elephant and was pregnant for 2 years. Nobody was counting. And I was never pregnant. So I got away with cutting. And then one day when they caught me, my mother covered my ass. Every time the school would call, my mom would say, oh no, she was sick. Well, one day they called and got a hold of my father. And he knew. He started guessing that my mom was not taking care of me properly anyway. And the school had told my father, well, your wife is covered for her. So he showed up in school. It was the day that the earth stopped, even for me now. When he came, every one of my friends was so scared. Oh my God, she's going to tell everybody we cut. They all thought I was going to be a fake because I cut with many other people. But I didn't because I'd never be allowed to hang around him again. And nothing was worse than my father coming in, instead of beating me and hitting me like I expected, he cried. And it affected me. He saw all those absence slips, And the teacher was asking, I want to know who wrote all of them. Well, I wrote exactly like my mother and forged not only every one of my absence slips, but all my friends' absence slips too. How else could we cut? I was actually smarter looking back than some of the teachers until I got caught. Well, when I got caught, my dad cried, but he didn't keep me away from people because I told him it was just I was going to beauty school. I wasn't doing drugs. I was just cutting because I was stupid and I wanted to go to beauty school. So that's where my mentality was when I was younger. And I was going to school 10 hours a day. So yeah, there was times that I cut beauty school and went to the beach and literally had sunstrokes because I'd stay there all day and try to get tan, and one day knowing I wouldn't be able to get back in. Passed out and threw up in front of all my friends. That was a fun day too. So I did make it through beauty school, and I graduated beauty school the same time that I graduated high school. And so I was able to work doing hair. Very talented, because I had such a codependency that I had a gift of letting most of my clients before they left their chair know how beautiful and special they were. I mean, I wanted to fix everybody. I wanted to help everybody. If you had a problem, and I know we all understand this, I can help you. I know how to take care of you. I know how to fix you. Me? No. You? Yes. So most of us codependent people are very loving, giving, passionate, and caring to a fault. We're caring about everybody else and we forget us. I was so insecure because I was so heavy. All I wanted was people to like me. And I had acne and I wanted boyfriends. And so I was like a funny girl to kind of cover all that insecurity up. So then when I had one boyfriend when I was 18 and a half and got a little older. Oh my God, it was the most codependent relationship I ever had. He treated me like a dog. I was never Sharon. I didn't even know who Sharon was. I was everything he wanted me to be. I dressed up the way he wanted me to be and do things he wanted me to do. I even fixed car engines with him, which I never cared. Of course, at this age, most of us are codependent. And I was in love with him from 16 years old. Oh my God, madly in love. And when I put somebody that I loved, they came in for everybody. Everybody came before me. But I realized he didn't love me. And somehow, some way, I did always have this feeling of self-worth somewhere inside. So I turned around when I was 21 after breaking up with him 4 or 5 times, and I married someone who loved me. Because my mommy told me, you always want to marry someone who loves you more. So that's what I was taught. It was my dad's fault. Mama cheated, and nobody took blame and shame for anything. But my mother's whole family cheated, and I found that out. And it went all the way back from grandfather to grandma. I mean, we go way back. And we find out where this all comes from. So I got married at 21, and I had 2 beautiful children. And I wasn't in love with him, but I liked the idea of moving out and having a family, you know, the whole 9 yards. But he was abusive. He was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. And my older brother became a cop, the one that was beat all the time. And as bad as it got with my first husband, and I was cheated on. I don't think he had a sexual addiction, but hey, he'd pay for it and thought nothing would be wrong with that. So unfortunately, I had a dysfunctional marriage for the first 11 years. And I was so angry and so mad, and I was raising 2 babies. And I loved them. And I went to parenting class, and I took it as seriously as I possibly could. I was 22 and 24, but I knew that I didn't have the right parenting skills. And unfortunately, as good as I might have been as a parent, I ruled with my anger. If I didn't have that anger, I probably would have been good. I read to my kids. I loved my kids. I never left my kids alone. I took total responsibility of being a parent. I owned their butts until they were 18, but I did call their names. And I did, when they were angry, when they did things bad, I would act out in anger. And sometimes I would smack them clear across the room. I never beat them to where I should have been in jail because I caught myself doing it very early when they were young. By the time my daughter was born, I realized I was too angry with my little boy. So I raised them as a mother who cared about their grades, their school, how they were fed. Me and their father were obese. I had two little kids. I didn't want them over 150 pounds like me and their dad were. So I went to Weight Watchers and I had lost my weight. And I would bring my daughter because I didn't want her to gain weight. They had the tendency. And so I didn't raise them on TV dinners. I literally fed them healthy because I had to eat healthy. And the first time I lost weight, it was 85 pounds. The second time I lost weight, it was 118 pounds. And at this time, raising my kids, I got down to 118. I'm only 5 feet tall. So I wasn't a vegetarian. I'd feed them meat, healthy. I would grill, I would barbecue vegetables. I let them have ice cream. But the cookies, the crap were not in my house because I couldn't eat it. So I remember the first time my son saw a ding dong at his friend's house and said, I didn't know about these because I didn't introduce them to him. So in so many ways, I felt that my kids were the most important thing to me, and their health and their education. I didn't know I was angry. I didn't see it. I thought I was just being strict and loving. And what did I know about? I never was as abusive as my father, because my father would call us all assholes and say stuff like, you know, you're going to piss me off. I'm going to cut off your head and dip this shit out. I grew up with this crap. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to break every bone in your body. I don't know if I was that bad, but still the anger was there. The insults were there. As much as I would praise my children to them, I made sure to throw that in. When I was raising them, we had punishments and rewards. I had them do chores. I gave them allowances. My family didn't teach me any responsibility. My kids were really good. My daughter was a challenge because she was hyperactive and smart. And sometimes our kids are smarter than we are. And we learn that later in life. But I did what I did with my kids. I had them go to school and they were good students. And I showed them my brother's report card that showed all B's. I never was honest with my kids until now. I never told them I cut school when they were younger because I was afraid they'd do it. I never told them I lost my virginity at 15 for fear they'd say, hey, Mom, you did it. My mom was my friend, but not my mama. I wanted to be a mama to my kids. I didn't want to be their friend. So I was more of a mother to them. But they saw the anger between me and their father. It was so dysfunctional. And of course, my first boyfriend was so dysfunctional. I was a victim, guys. Okay, so I'm going to move on. When I was married 11 years and my kids were still 8, 9 years old because they're close in age, I met a man that I fell in love with. Hands over foot, whatever you want to say it, head over heels, in love with him. Again, I put him before me. I thought the sun rose and the moon set on this man. And it was an addiction that I didn't recognize. And I wasn't happy with my first husband. He was cheating on me and hitting me. But I didn't have the knowledge of codependency to just leave him and take care of myself. I found a man that was going to take care of my kids and me, who loved me, who I loved. And then he told me the truth. He said, you know, I have to be honest. I cheated with everybody I ever was with, but I never loved them. Oh, he's never going to cheat on me. That'll never happen. So, okay, I left my husband 11 years for this man that I was blind in love with. And my daughter came with me, but my son, he didn't want to. And to this day, I'll always regret that my son stayed, because my ex-husband and his wife were abusive to my son. One thing I need to add into this story before I go further. My ex-husband married my husband's now ex-wife. So doesn't this sound like a Peyton place? So they weren't exactly the nicest to my son. And if I could do things over again, hey, wouldn't we all do it different? But I didn't. And so I was just in love and thought everything was wonderful. I still had my parents at this time. And I worked, and my kids had grown up. They were 18. They moved out on their 18th birthday. At 16, my kids were busy. They worked. My daughter at 16 worked for Radio Shack. My son at 18 was becoming a contractor. I mean, my kids, they were responsible. They made money at 16. I taught them with their allowance. 18, bye, Mom. I'll be homeless before I ever move back with you. And they had never moved back. And they moved out. And they are so self-sufficient. I am extremely proud of my children and very sorry that I had hurt them. And I am in this program long enough where I had made my amends. So then we go on to my husband, Mark. My kids move out. And then I had my parents that moved down the street from me, because I had a mother who had Lewy body Alzheimer's and got it in her 60s. And my son, at 16 years old, came to live with me because he got sick of the abuse from his father and the stepmother. That was happy days and God answering prayers. I always had my higher power, and my higher power has always been there, even if the answer wasn't yes. So I took care of my mom and my dad. They moved down the street, and my father died on New Year's Eve, 1995, which shocked me, but I was still okay. I mean, I had my mother to take care of that night for 10 years, and I had my kids, and I had a strong 16-year-old daughter that would catch my mother outside at 2 o'clock in the morning. And my mother would say, well, what's she doing outside? So I had a teenager and a mama going back into teenage years at the same time. And I lost my father. Mark was excellent to my parents. The best caregiver you could ever know in your life. He loved my father. He took care of my mother when I was falling apart and couldn't handle what was happening to her. So he was always there. And he was a good husband that way. He took care of my kids. Great stepfather. When they needed cars, when they needed anything, I never had to beg him. He was like, yep. And he has a daughter, and I had a stepdaughter. And we treated all three of our kids very fairly. So there's a part of my husband that was so giving and loving, spoiled me, made me dinner every night, still does to this day. He worked really hard. He took care of my kids and my parents. Then my parents die. My kids grow up, and I'm beginning to recognize problems with my husband and I. He's wonderful at home, but he's a whole different human being at work. He was somebody I didn't know. And then I would have dreams that would haunt me of him cheating on me. Now, my biggest fear in my life was being cheated on because I watched my mother do it. I watched my mother have a problem and yet could get any man in the world she wanted. She was gorgeous. She was only 4'11", 95 pounds. And she was from the era of the Hollywood. So she was glamorous and gorgeous and had that air. When I got older, I finally had to tell her I'm sick of your boyfriends and literally hang up on them and said I had enough. And then when she got sick, she totally forgot about all that and grew very close with my father, who my father was madly in love with my mother, regardless of her faults. And I didn't know if my father ever knew she was cheating, because my father and I never really talked about that. But when my mother got extremely sick, my dad took care of her. And in the last 10 years of their lives, I've watched my mother pet and love on my father, which none of my brothers and sisters got to see because it was so dysfunctional. So taking care of and being a caregiver is a whole story in itself. And eventually I lost my mother, and Mark was there to take care of her in 2002. Then I felt alone. I started having grandbabies. Oh, I love my grandbabies. They are the most precious things on earth. And yes, I'm Coda, I would die for my grandbabies. I got to be close to my granddaughters because they were out here, my daughter's out here, and I have grandkids back east. I love them so dearly, but it isn't like when I was younger that I gave everything to my grandparents. Today, being grandma, I come last. They're not codependent the same way I was. But then comes when we're all growing up, my husband's getting better jobs and his acting out's getting worse. He's messing around with people that he was working with, and I knew it. But did I have proof? No. Why did I know it for 19 years? I didn't ever trust my own capabilities of knowing it. I didn't, because my mother cheated. I thought, well, maybe I'm just freaking out and think everybody's a cheater. But I was jealous. And it was because when he took me places at his work, he would ignore me and sit with other women. Why didn't I leave then and say, you know what, I'm unhappy? Because I thought it was me. I thought his cheating was me. So then I get to the point where one day my son turns 30 years old. My kids now are 38, 39, and 41, and I'm 64 years old. Now, at this point, my son's turning 30. I have 30 people over at my house, family, friends, everybody. And I'm throwing a party for my son in my backyard and in my house. And what a wonderful thing I can do for him. On that night, my life changed overnight. I was able to handle my mom sick, changing diapers. I was able to handle my father sick, abusive with my brother, and taking care of him. I handled all that. But the night of my son's 30th birthday, my husband was inappropriate at the party. And not only did I find out, but everybody there found out. And I was destroyed the first time in life and wanted to die. I know we've all been there. I went into my bedroom and spent my son's 30th birthday party in the room contemplating on how am I going to breathe? How am I going to live? Not wanting anybody in that room with me and not knowing what to do. Now, why was I so shocked when in 19 years, I knew it, and yet it hit me as if I was shocked the first time. For many months, I had to watch Cheaters, if any of you guys ever saw that show, just to tell myself, why did I need the proof? Why didn't I trust myself? Well, I found out when I died that night. I went to a therapist, and the therapist said, you're codependent. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. And she said, yes, you are. And she took me and she said, you're codependent. And I didn't understand what it meant, like most of you didn't understand what it meant. But I was drowning. I fell in the water of ocean, and I didn't even have a lifesaver. Swimming and swimming, and I didn't even see land. I went into my first CODA meeting, and proudly, I'm at that same CODA meeting today. And I love that CODA meeting. It saved my life. CODA saved my life. And that's why I'm thanking you all for letting me share, so I can give back in my 12th step to all of you. Because I was miserable and I was happy, but I was loving. And I was able to give it, but I didn't know how. So I walked into my CODA meeting, and I have to share about my very first CODA meeting. Because every one of us that goes into our first Coda meetings gives a shit about ourselves, or we wouldn't have gone in there. I'd filed divorce and thrown my husband out. I was alone for the first time in my entire life. And I went into my Coda meeting, but still thought it was all about me. Isn't that kind of funny? Where Coda put everybody first, but it really is a manipulating, controlling disease. I went in there and everybody said, thank you for sharing. And I didn't understand how it went. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. But I went along with it and I waited till it was my turn. When it was my turn to talk, I said, wow, thank you all for thanking me. I never understood it was thank you for sharing. I thought they were saying thank you for sharing. And I share that in a lot of my Coda meetings because it was still about me. Thank you for sharing? No, it was thank you for sharing. So I came out of there thinking, oh my God, it's all about me. I read Coda, oh my God, it's all about me. It's describing me. And today, it just thrills me when I have sponsees and they tell me, it's about me. Yeah, it is. It's about each and every one of us. So I went into it and I loved my higher power and I loved the meetings and I got addicted to my meetings. But I thought there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a victim. My husband did it all to me. Still going to a therapist. I didn't do anything wrong. It's all my husband. I'm a victim. And then 3-4 years into Coda, it did take me a minute. My therapist said, when are you going to take responsibility for you? I said, me? What did I do? I never even cheated on anybody. And she says, well, didn't you pick your boyfriends? Then I'm doing step 4 and I'm writing about my first boyfriend, thinking, what an asshole. But we still lived at home with our parents, so I'll cut him some slack. And then my second husband, who was abusive and cheating, what an asshole. And then my third husband, second. I was only married 2 times. My second husband, I was as codependent as could be and so madly in love, I wondered, what did I do to make him cheat? Then I learned it had nothing to do with me. Thank you, Coda. Nothing. I don't care if he was married to Queen of Sheba, he would have done that. Nothing. I found that out in this wonderful program. My responsibility was my picker. I had a shitty picker. Why wouldn't I? I had a dad that was beating my brother and being cheated on. I had a mom that was cheating. But my mother told me. And not until I was an adult. I had somebody very close to me that was molested. And she was a child. And it affected me. So much so I had to stay away from this child so I didn't act out in front of her and cause her lifetime issues. At that time, my mother shared with me. Her father was a drunk and molested her. To me, it was like the first time I've ever heard about it and was going through all these feelings of 2 loved ones that I knew. And my mama molested by her dad. I didn't know. I wouldn't have named my son after him. He was a drunk. So for her sharing, it really helped me because I was mad at her when I married Mark. I married somebody like my mother. And I ended up like my father with the anger issues. Thank you for Coda. I had the best sponsee. I had a great therapist that I still work with. And I worked my 12 steps. And I worked the 12 traditions. And I reached my promises. And now I can tell you I have spiritual awakenings, which every one of you is one of many spiritual awakenings. I've always done speakers and workshops and never got to share. And I always wanted to give back in the 12 step. I know there's some of you that I am going to reach in one way or another because I was reached by so many people. I was only 3 months in Coda and I went to my first convention and met Ken and Mary. Did I stay for workshops? No, because I was too dysfunctional running around as the victim, but I stayed for the speakers. And I stayed for Ken and Mary, and Ken shared what he had done. And I thought, oh my God, you used to be a cheater and you don't cheat anymore? Well, realize that there was 30 people there when this all went down. So thank God I went into Coda because I had friends and family telling me what to do. You need to leave them. You need to do this. You need to file for a divorce. I was confused. Once a cheat, always a cheat. I heard everybody's dysfunction. Thank you, Coda. And thank you to my therapist. I butt each and every one of them out to do my 12 steps, to do self-care, to do self-loving. I wanted to heal. And then I learned the victim is a choice. And I thought, really? It's my choice? Well, guess what? I'm not going to be a victim anymore of anybody. I even stopped watching cheaters because I realized it was my choice if I wanted to be a victim or not. Then I started sponsoring because I wanted to help people. And I got into our meetings and I was a secretary. And I know I wrote all these down because I had done a lot. Okay, first time I walked into Coda, I did my 12 steps, my 12 traditions. And then I became a secretary. I became and did service. And then I became a treasurer for the meetings that I'm still doing for now. Then I was a GSR for our inner group because I was just eating up recovery, my higher power, the love. I was addicted to the good as much as I was addicted to the bad. That's when I started sponsoring. And when I was a GSR, I was able to listen to all the meetings around in our area to see how they were working, and I could share about our meetings as well. And so then I went to SoCal and became a delegate for 2 years. Now I was jumping into Coda right away because I loved the recovery and I loved the spiritual awakenings. When I became a delegate is when it all started, and I went into international Coda. And I see people in every country of the world talking about what happened to them, talking about how they reached their recovery, talking about where they are today. It brings tears to my eyes. So I stayed in international events because it's so beautiful. We do exist. And then I went to the events committee, which I've been in for 5 years in Coda. That's when I started picking speakers. I started going to workshops so I know how much they help and how much they work and how much that we learn from all of them. Well, the very first time I did it, I believe I met some of you there. It was the 30th Coda anniversary, and we did it in Carefree, Arizona. Well, that was the very first time I was in the events committee. I was the one that did the speakers and the workshops. And we had what, 400 people there that time? Oh my God, I gave it all to God. I was in Coda enough to give it to God. Not dwell, not pray, turn it over. Every single one of my workshops showed up was standing room only. And I was there for every one of my workshops to make sure they had all their copies, that they were calm and they were relaxed. And if they needed anything, I was right there. They all went off without a hitch. And I was able to introduce Ken and Mary at our 30th anniversary. Wow, what a thrill that was for me, because I have met them before. They're really down-to-earth, wonderful, loving people. So to me, that was a spiritual awakening. Having standing ovations was a spiritual awakening. It was the most wonderful convention in CSC I've ever had. My feet didn't even touch the ground. And when I introduced them, I was naturally high as a kite. And I got to sit with them at their table. And I was teary-eyed, and I had said to Mary, I said, I've never been prouder. Nobody's here to see me. And she gave me a kiss and she said, all of you were. And that was enough for me. That was my biggest spiritual awakening. I always hand things over to my higher power. I don't know where my time is, but I just want to talk a little bit about where I live today. Because I am in Coda and I sponsor. And I'm still in the events committee. And I can't say how much and how important it is to do your 12 steps. Not just once. I can't even count how many times I did my 12 steps. I've done them so many times, I can't even cheat and take next year's 12 steps. It won't work because my answers are different every year. And when I have sponsors, I work with my 12 traditions. So every time I'm working with the sponsee, I'm working with it again myself. And the 12 traditions, they work even in our relationships, which we're seeing in our relationships kit that Richard wrote. I was there when he spoke a couple of years ago. I've learned from everybody. And I work the program. I live, breathe, and work the program. When I started CODA, I couldn't fly. And I thought, well, how am I going to be in the events committee if I'm too chicken to fly? I went with my husband and I've thrown up, passed out, and I mean paranoid to fly. So the first time that I flew to Hawaii and my aunt took me, I took 4 Xanax. Now, I'm not a druggie, but I'll tell you, I didn't remember anything but waking up the next day. But nothing's worse than the anxiety of flying and not enjoying the trip you're on because you know you got to fly home. Through this program, I have cut down to where I fly alone. I fly across the country. I fly to Canada all alone. I put my big girl pants on and I put my faith in God and I take a window seat. And I am just appreciative of everything. Every morning I get up and breathe. I'm appreciative. Having 3 now beautiful kids and 7 grandchildren. I am so appreciative. I don't have COVID. I'm appreciative, even if I'm in my house going crazy like everybody else. I count my blessings. I count my gifts so I can survive. And that's what I've learned through this program is how to work it, not get too involved with your sponsees, because sometimes I have. I've listened to them, I come home and I cry and I think, oops. So we have to sometimes be careful of our codependency going in circles again. And that's when our boundaries just come in place and keep our boundaries. Once we know this program, we feel it through our fingers and through our head and down to our toes. It's all our higher power. And I've always believed in God. And I always knew I had a free will. But when I left my husband for Mark, I took my free will back and did what I wanted. But I didn't have the spirituality that I was missing until I went back to CODA and realized I could forgive myself. So here I am in 2008, and now it's 2014, and I'm in CODA. And I'm trying to get out of this victim. And I'm working the steps over and over again. And then we come to making amends. I made an amends to my ex-husband. I made an amends to my dad and my cousin and everyone I needed to, even if they have passed away. And my ex-husband, he did forgive me. And so I learned to work the steps, but I forgot somebody. And in 2014, it was me. I was mad all my life. And the person I was mad at was me for having a stupid boyfriend when I was younger, putting up with the crap, for having an abusive husband the first time and allowing him to hit me, and then allowed myself to be cheated on for 19 years. But I had to also realize I left a husband for another man. Don't I have to be responsible for that? So it finally came to my head. What I did, I paid for my own consequences. So I have to tell you, I suffered them. But then I came to a point in CODA that I was sorry for it. And I wanted to be forgiven. I wanted to be forgiven from God. I wanted to move on. I couldn't do anything about 30 years ago anymore. It was over. It was done. I had to forgive myself. And when I did, and this was 2014, I started 2008, my whole life changed. I was able to forgive other people. I was able to forgive my husband. And when I filed divorce, he went into a SAA program for 12 years. I couldn't take care of his problem. He had his issues. I had my issues. He went to take care of self-care his way. I took care of my self-care my way. I had to stop being that victim. And this was in 2014, and he had been in program since 2008 and has not acted out ever since. I'll say he's CODA sometimes because he's in an SAA program, and he would laugh at that. But he went from shame to grace, and I went from codependency to grace. And we had to do it on our own, him his way and mine way. But when I forgave myself, I forgave others. Then I started to love myself, and then I loved others. I started to respect me, and I respected others. And I'll be honest with you, if somebody don't respect me or love me, I don't care. I am in my own skin. I'm doing self-care. You love me, I love you back. If you don't, oh well, I can't please everybody. But then I started to hold my head up high. I'm not a victim. I'm not someone that was just cheated on. I'm proudly CODA. I'm Sharon. I'm a loving person who gave and gave and gave to a fault. Okay, I don't do it anymore. I give when I want to. I love because I can. I have my boundaries. And I also trust myself that if my husband were to act out again, I don't have to wait for proof. I don't have to cry 19 years upstairs in my room and crawl into a ball. I'm just going to say, this is my boundary. I'm not happy. Doesn't mean I wouldn't be hurt and cried, but I will take care of myself. And I will do that the rest of my life. I do it for me first. And only. It helps other people. And when I sponsor, I share my experiences, strengths, and hope with every one of my sponsees so they trust me as well. And when I listen to other people's experience, strength, and hope, I have to be honest with you guys, sometimes I think I was raised by Ozzie and Harriet. Now, I don't know how many of you people remember the old 50s series that were on TV, but the parents were always white and dressed in suits and ties, and the mothers all wore dresses. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like Leave It to Beaver. So we didn't talk about issues in individual families. We didn't dare. We all thought we were abnormal. Today, we're all normal. I've never seen a perfect family. I've never met the perfect couple. I've never seen anybody's parents raise the perfect kids. We're human. We make mistakes. And trust, I never had any. Today, I trust myself and my higher power. 100%. Can I trust other people? Can any of us be trusted when we're human beings? Yes, to a certain degree. And I always use my lifetime friend as an example. I've known her since I was 3. And we've been there through thick and thin. She's not CODA, but she's been there with me because she says I make her go. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought. With my girlfriend. And I forgot where I was. Oh my God. I'm having a senior moment, you guys. I didn't want to do that. Let me move on to other things then, and I will come back to her. Okay. Faith and religion and today. Okay, I live and breathe CODA. This is why I don't like to read. And I have peace in my life. And I forgive myself. Today, my faith in forgiving and liking myself, it's not that believing that God can. It's knowing that my higher power will. And that's a big difference when we learn to turn things over to our higher power. It's knowing our higher power will. If we're still dwelling and praying, oh my God, I wish this, I wish that, and I wish this, we're not letting go. So today what I work on is letting go of the struggle, because that's something that all of us will do. I've also liked what Einstein said. Einstein says, religion without science is blind. Well, we're not so religious, but we're spiritual. Science without religion is lame. So that's how we can live our life every day with Coda. I sometimes have sponsees, I don't know if some of you do that, will come and say, what do you do if you don't believe in a higher power? Who do you reach out to? Well, I really believe the higher power is not humans. And that's what we learn as codependents. As human beings are not our higher power, like my father was when I was younger. My father knew everything. He was my higher power. Boy, was I shocked to find out he didn't. So that's where I learned to forgive myself. I don't take on other people's shame and blame. And I have faith in everything that I do, in every program that I work. Right now, I live life today. I'm not just surviving. I took that ball and chain off, especially when I forgave myself. I can say no, and I can say it nicely. And my higher power is the limit. And I tell everybody, reach out. Reach out to your higher power. Reach out to one of us. I think one day at a time, and to reach out. If I'm going to talk about recovery, sponsorship. I don't know how many people have a sponsor, but I recommend a sponsor. It took me from 2008 to 2014 just to be able to forgive myself because I forgot to put me in the amends. So today when I sponsor other people, I make sure that they put themselves in the amends because I went so long making amends to other people and forgetting myself. Today I live victim-free. I don't hold grudges. I don't hate anybody, but boy, can I love. I say I love you. I say it freely. I say it to my children. And I've asked some of my friends, do you ever tell your children you love them? No, I never heard it. Well, you're missing the meat and potatoes of life. We've all experienced the crap, the toxicities in our life. Now I want to enjoy the beauty of it. I watch the butterflies and the birds. I tell my children before and after every phone call how much I love them. I remind them, all of them and my grandchildren, how much that I love them and appreciate them. My codependent family, I can tell you that I love you. I don't have that problem because I love me. I couldn't do it before. So it's all how we feel about ourselves and self-love. And that's what I have today. I am proudly codependent. And when I introduce myself as proudly codependent. If I didn't go through all that hurt and pain, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be able to give it back to others. I wouldn't have the faith and the strength that I have in me and my higher power because we go together. It's a whole different life, especially right now in this unprecedented time that we're living in. We're all on Zoom. That right there is a change. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful because of our codependence program and that we can still reach each other in these unprecedented times. It isn't even all about COVID. It's about everything that's going on and survival of all of us. And it starts with self-love. We don't have it, we ain't giving it. We don't respect ourselves, we ain't gonna respect anybody else. Trust. I trust myself. I don't have to give that away. That's one of my boundaries that I keep. But before I go and end the story, I want to let you know where I am today. I'm still married, 32 years. I went through my program. My husband, Mark, went through his program. I don't have the crazy love addiction over my husband that I used to, where I think I would die without him. I don't have that with anybody anymore. We have a friendship, a spiritual friendship. So yeah, there is hope after infidelity that I would have never thought because I didn't see it in my family. But in my home, yes. Do I trust that he would never cheat again? I don't even go there because I'll tell you what, those days of looking at his phone, looking on the computer, obsessing at what he's doing is over. That's not self-care for me. That's obsessing, controlling, manipulating. If I have to do that, I don't want the relationship. So I haven't done that. We had to work to get to this point. It took time to build the trust. It took him being 100% honest in everything that he did do, which was so difficult because in my recovery and my husband's recovery, it was physical. I had to run into these women going through my 12-step as they ignored me and stepped on me and treated me like shit. But he ignored them and he dropped every single one of them. And I had to work through my insecurities and hold my head high. Because I was more embarrassed, to be honest with you, that I was with him in the beginning, thinking everybody's going to think, oh my God, she's still with him. I don't feel that way anymore. And I don't care what people think. And I know what's going on in my own relationship. And the funny thing is, even our exes are still married after 32 years. So, hey, things work out in God's way, don't they? But not without recovery. And not without recovery with my husband either. But I didn't take on his illness. He did not take on my illness. But right now we can work together because we're both in program. To be honest with you, I don't think I would have stayed with him if he didn't go into program. Or if he would have left me for another woman, or if he had got somebody pregnant, or even if he wasn't a great husband. We're talking about a man who had an illness, who was the greatest husband in the world, who had a secret side. Doesn't matter, I wouldn't take it. I won't compromise myself like that anymore. And neither does he. And because of his 12-step program and my husband's addiction, I learned about my mother's. I was able to forgive Mama, even though she's gone. She took me with me. She never knew. She thought my dad was the one who made her cheat. She never got to realize that she was a victim from her own father. She didn't understand that. And she never got to learn that that was her sexual addiction. We would go places and she would hit up on men and say, I'm sorry, I have my daughter with me. Well, I was in my 20s and my 30s at that point. And she was still hitting up on men. And I was mad at my mom when this all happened, but she had already passed away and so did my dad. So I dealt with this through this codependency program and forgave them. And boy, do I miss my parents. I was so close and loved them very much. They weren't perfect, but I would do anything to have my dysfunctional parents back again. So now it's me, and I'm the top one in my generation, and it's different than it used to be. And the only way that I can help my children is to make amends to them and let them see me recover. And if anybody knows me better than anybody, it's my children. And sometimes my son had seen me trigger, because I'm not going to tell you, I've never triggered in my life. And unfortunately, I was such a rageaholic when I trigger bad. But then I get over it. I go back to God, I forgive myself, I move on. I don't stay stuck anymore. And I remind my son when he says, oh my God, look at you. Recovery doesn't always help. I say, Ben, I'm sorry I used his name. I just say to my children that I was that way every day of my life. I woke up a monster. I went to bed a monster. I was serious and angry. And I can't tell you how nice it is not to be angry anymore. I want to feel the love. I don't want to feel the pain and the hurt. It's over. It's done. So I did find my little lifesaver. I did swim over to shore. I did get help. I went to Coda. I went to a therapist. And then I walked away from all my toxicity. And I saw this beautiful bridge and I walked across it and I'm in paradise right now. In this beautiful island with all of you people. And that's how I feel. None of us are perfect. That's what I was going to say. My girlfriend that I've known all my life, I trust. I was going to leave my children to her unmarried because I didn't trust my siblings if I died with my husband. I trust her with my money, my house, everything. But could I trust her with a secret? Hell no. Could I tell her something and she wouldn't blab it faster than the New York Times? No. That's why I don't put trust in human beings. I'll trust you. Hey, if you're a good cook, I trust you to make a good meal for me. I trust you that you could come inside and you won't steal from me. But we can't trust a human being not to be a human being. We can't put trust in a human being that they're not going to make a mistake and falter, because we are. And at least now when I do make that mistake, I can say I'm sorry. And my husband and I have a relationship that we did not get here overnight, but that we can talk to each other and that we have mutual respect. And we let go of the small things. And it's a whole lot different. There's an appreciation that we both have. And yet he never went to my therapist, and he doesn't go to my CODA meetings. And I don't go to his SAA meetings. So if we all took care of ourselves with self-care, love thyself, and CODA and our higher power, we can't go wrong. This journey puts us on a road, a journey. And I join my journey all the time with my sponsees because it's a beautiful journey. We end up on the other side so much better than we entered it. And sometimes I describe it like a tunnel with a little tiny hole at the end of the tunnel. But I've walked through it. That tunnel, that light got bigger and bigger and bigger. I walked through it. That tunnel isn't even seen in my rearview mirror anymore. I keep walking. So that's why I want to share, because I'm so peaceful today. I am so passionate about CODA. None of my friends are in CODA, but they all know about it. And I think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And I have a better life today than I ever did. And like I said, I'm 64 years old. I'm proudly CODA. And do you know I'm happier, healthier, and more beautiful today at 64 than I was in my entire life when I was fat, when I had acne, when I didn't like myself. I didn't let myself shine from the inside out like I'm doing now. I like when the room lights up. I don't like it when I go in a room and it's dark. And if I could help one person, anybody in this room, sorry, my dog, that's what I want to do. And with my closing, I don't even know how far that I've been. I'm just probably codependent. And I hope that I've shared my experiences, strengths, and hopes with all of you, because I have a story to tell. And today I'm still with my husband, and he's listening, and I can share without shame to anybody, because it's my story. If there's shame with anybody, it's my life that I chose. I'm grateful to my higher power. I pray and give to my higher power even when it comes to my children. And my answers, they come in God's time, not in mine. We do have to wait for results. Sometimes the answer is no, but the spiritual awakenings, I can't count any more than how many times I've done these steps. And to share my story from codependency to grace, because codependency is not shameful. We're not bad people because we want to be loved, because we want to fix people, because we want to help. We want to be needed. We just didn't know it comes from ourselves first. But I decided to keep that beautiful person inside, my child, Sharon. And I put her in a car seat now. I don't let her be angry and cuss everybody out. I comfort her and I love her. She's my imagination. And we should never get rid of our child inner, ever. Just don't let her run the show. And that's what I've learned to do here. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening and being with me. I'm sorry, I had a mental pause there. I call it a senior moment, but it happens. It's not perfection, it's progress. And I will be keeping it going until the day I die, because that's my destination, is when I'm with God and my journey is all with you. I hope to see you all again, safe and healthy. And I love you all. Thank you for letting me share.
And we're going to have Christina share her experience, strength, and hope. I've known Christina for quite a while. Christina is an amazing person with a sparkling personality that everyone has come to know and love since she's been the chairperson of our committee. And I'm pretty excited because I don't know that I've heard her story, her CODA story. So I'm looking forward to hearing your experience, strength, and hope. If I could roll out the red carpet for you, I would do it.
Thank you.
All right.
We should totally, I'm Christina, I'm codependent. Thank you, Jeremiah. We should, I would have loved to have one of those little videos with the red carpet coming down, and that's how, like, I get so, I love all kinds of fun activities. So I'm codependent. I am grateful. I'm proudly codependent. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing with us. And I got a lot out of your story. It's so good to hear you. And I can really relate a lot to your story. And so I have been the events committee chair for probably over 3 years. And since I chair, I don't really ask myself to share because I'm the one that finds the speakers and the workshop presenters. I don't just say, hey, Christina, do you want to share? So anyways, the committee asked me to share, and I'm very honored to do that. And so I've been in CODA now for 6 years. Well, it'll be 6 years on August 14th. And so my story starts out with, I had gotten clean from drugs and alcohol, and I entered the program of Narcotics Anonymous in 2011. And I came in through love addiction because the guy was in the program and he was clean. And so I'm going to get clean because he is. And so I get into a relationship, and I'm still out in active addiction. And this relationship ended up being very violent. And there was a lot of domestic violence happening in that relationship. And I ended up leaving the relationship. And I ended up getting clean, like on 4/12 of 12. So I just got my 8 years clean in April, and never did I think that I would ever get clean or live without alcohol. And so that's just been a blessing. And so we broke up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, great. So they tell me, don't get into a relationship right away. Get yourself a higher power, get yourself a support group, get yourself a home group, get a service position, work the steps, constantly, go to meetings, share, work your steps, do gratitude lists, all this stuff. So I'm working a program, and then I'm thinking, well, they tell me don't get into a relationship for your first year. So I'm like, well, 6 months in, I was like, I think I'm finally ready for a relationship. My God, I stopped using drugs and alcohol. Obviously, I'm ready for the white picket fence now. I am getting into a relationship. And I was at work, and I was in the cafeteria, and there was this very assertive guy, and he felt like he appeared very sure of himself, very charming and charismatic. And, like I was very insecure, and I wasn't very sure of myself at all. And like, I was like, oh, this is very attracting. So I would go into the break room, and I would just like prop myself up. And I remember like tossing this apple, and then like tossing it to my other hand, all seductively trying to seduce him. Anyways, we end up in a relationship. So we're in a relationship, and we get into this relationship, and my disease, my codependency is like here's one of the fantasies. I told myself that if my soulmate is going to be coming off of the elevator one of these days, I'm going into work, and I'm going to get into the elevator, and my soulmate is going to be in the elevator. We're going to lock eyes, and that's going to be it. And he's going to know that I am his friend, like I'm finally here and he's finally there. And then the one day I'm waiting at the freaking elevator. My soon to be new boyfriend is in the elevator, and I looked at him. I was like, this is a sign from God. This is it. And I looked at him and I locked eyes, and he looked at me, and he's probably thinking like, why is this girl looking at me like staring at me like just like this, like what's wrong? And I was like, oh my gosh. And that got me high for like days. And this is the fantasy that I had to keep telling myself, like, this is from God. But little did I know that it was a fantasy that my codependents made up. So we get into a relationship. He was like, you know, I was playing hard to get, and he was just like, you know, asking me to go to the bar or go out for happy hour this time. I'm like, I don't drink, I don't do this, I don't do that. And then the one day he was like, well, what do you like to do? I was like, I like to do Bikram yoga. And he's like, well, sign me up. I'm going to yoga now with you. And so we end up we start going to yoga, right? And then we get matching yoga outfits. Like, he's wearing these little yoga shorts. They're like a Speedo. And I'm wearing like the matching set. Totally like, this is the best thing ever. This is totally a God thing. So anyways, we're in this relationship, and I am in Narcotics Anonymous, 2 years, working a program, having a sponsor, all this stuff. And I started like, I couldn't stop compulsively acting out. And so I would get triggered, and I would just pack up my bags and I'm gone. And then I'm on the road, and I'm like, okay, so he better call me right now to tell me how much he misses me and how he's so wrong for doing that, and I should come back. So I'd get in my car, I'd leave, and he'd call and say, why are you going anywhere? Come back. And I'm like, okay, so we did this for months and months and months. And I'm just telling my sponsor, I'm like, what the hell's wrong? Like, I cannot stop leaving. I can't stop raging. I can't stop acting out like this. I can't stop with these fear fantasy stories. And I was like, gosh, what is wrong with me? Well, maybe you need to do another gratitude list or hit a meeting or just don't leave. And I'm like, okay, great. But this is going on months now. So what happened is now I go into his place, and he lived in Scottsdale at the time. And so I go into his place, and he was a Virgo, and you literally can eat off of the floor. Everything was like, nothing really changed. Everything had its order. So I go in, and on the nightstand, there was this candelabra that looked like a pineapple. And with a candle in it, like one of those long candles. And I'm thinking, like, why would a guy have this? A guy should never have that. I go over to the candlestick, and I hold her, and I picked it up. I'm like, where the fuck did he get this thing? Where did he get this? I looked at it, like the sticker on the bottom, it said Tommy Bahama, and it looked like it was used. So I grabbed it, I go charging out to the kitchen, and I said, where the fuck did you get this candlestick holder? Where did this thing come from? I want to know. And he like looked at me like, I bought it from JCPenney's. And I said, you did not buy this at JCPenney's. This is not new. This sticker on the bottom is used. This is not new. Where did this thing come from? And he said, well, my ex-wife was getting rid of a bunch of stuff, and so I decided, well, I'll just take it because she was going to get rid of it. I said, how dare you take something from your ex-marriage bring it into our relationship. And at that time, I had zero esteem, zero self-esteem. That candlestick holder to me meant more than I did. I made that candlestick holder mean more to him and to me than I did. Like, I had zero self-esteem. Like, I was below that candlestick holder. I'm like, I can't believe you would do this to me. I'm like, this is it. We are finally done. I give him back this candlestick holder. I pack up my bags. I said, F you, I'm gone. I get into my car and I am raging down Scottsdale Road. Going to the freeway, I'm like, I am going to drink. I am beside myself. And I was like, holy shit, like, I don't have anybody that anybody that uses anymore. Like, I'm not going to go sit at a bar. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing. And so there's a lot of people in our area, since we're the birthplace in Coda, that have gone to see Ken, and that are in NA, that are old timers that have gone through his group. They said, well, we think that you might need a little bit more help than NA that can give you. We it sounds like you're codependent. I'm like, codependent? They said, oh, call him and make an appointment. I'm like, oh, I don't need outside help. I was one of those Nazis where I only need the NA 12 steps. I don't need anything else. I don't need any, psychologist, therapist. But this was all programming from their perspective. So I'm like, oh shit. So now I go and make an appointment to go see Ken. And we start talking. And at that time, I thought I had an amazing upbringing. I was, I couldn't understand why I had problems. And I go to a retreat. There's usually two a year here. I go to a retreat and I learn that I'm codependent. And I learned a little bit about what codependency is. I learned that I'm a love addict, I'm a bulimic, and I'm a co-sex addict. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a lot. Like, what am I going to do with all of that? I'm on my steps. And now where do I go now? Like, what are you telling me? I've been in the wrong program for 2 years. You need to start going to Coda. And I'm like, oh God, okay. So then I start going to Coda meetings. August 14th to 14 is my Coda anniversary. And that was when I first stepped foot into his office. And that man has been amazing. And he's taught me about my feelings, about my codependency, about my little girl, my inner child, my inner teenager, my critical parent, my self-parent, my empowered woman, my higher self. I mean, the list goes on and on and on for the gifts that I've gotten from being in group with him for 6 years. So I started going to group therapy once a week it was a co-ed group, and I got to see and untangle all of the enmeshment from childhood. I ended up getting out of that relationship. And I had stayed out of a relationship for 5 years. And that was the best thing that I had ever done for myself. So in that time, I learned a lot about myself. Like, I had zero identity. I had no esteem, and I used everybody else's esteem as my esteem. I enmeshed myself with everyone's reality. If you like that, then I like that. Or if you wanted to go for dinner there, I wanted to go for dinner there. And so I learned that I had to write my story out. And I was in this car accident when I was 19. And I was hit head on by a drunk driver. And my friend Tony was driving, and we were hit head on February 13th of 2001. And I was buried from my neck down. And my friend died. And so I was buried from my neck down. I remember waking up afterwards, and I remember looking at the drunk driver before we hit. She was going 80, we were going 55 and hit head on. And I remember looking into her eyes before we hit. We flew, I guess, 20 feet in the air, landed. I was crushed from, my back is broken still. My leg was severed off right on at my knee. It broke 12 inches down the center. Both of my heels and ankles were crushed also. And so, and my friend died immediately. And there's nothing to the vehicle except for the back tires and the trunk. And I carried this with me for years. Like, it happened in 2001. And when I would tell people the story, they would say, my God, you've got to be really, like, did you do therapy? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, I just did everything I had to do to just get better. So Ken said, well, you definitely have feelings about that. I said, no, I don't. It happened in 2001. He said, okay, I want you to write your story out. I said, okay, cool. I wrote the whole story out. I go into the group and I say, okay, I'm ready. I want time to process this piece of work I've got. Okay. All of a sudden I have the paper out and I start reading my story, and boom, the feelings came. I mean, I'm talking sobbing, pain, where it came out of my body and I couldn't even control it. Like, I'm shaking and I was like, what is happening to me? I do not get what's happening. This happened in 2001. Why am I feeling it now? And he said, because you have swallowed all of those feelings down and you need to get it out of your cell tissue. This is going to damage your heart, soul, and spirit. You need to get it out. And you need to grieve. This is going to be a grieving process. And I was like, oh gosh, oh, really? Wow. And he's like, you're going to probably, you know, when feelings come up, check in with the group, talk to your sponsor, you know, have somebody hold you, get yourself a bear that's your inner child and hold your bear and just tell yourself how much you love yourself and you're here for yourself and so sorry that it happened. And I had so much body shame come up because I also had to be gutted from like my breastbone all the way down. And they took my spleen out. I had a traumatic brain injury as well as a traumatic lung injury. And so the body image issues, and he said, well, you need to put your hand over all of your scars and just tell them that you love them and thank you. Thank your body for being there for you. And it was like, I'm finally like in my body now. Like I just lived outside of my body for so long. I could feel my body. I could see my scars, and it's just hard because I, you know, would see people being able, like having, you know, is a little disfigured because of what happened, and I can't run anymore. I can't do squats. I had to write a goodbye letter to ballet. I was a ballerina, and I, you know, wrote a gratitude and goodbye letter to ballet. Thank you for being there for me. And it was like a thorough fourth, fifth, and sixth step for 5 years. And to pick myself up from these broken places, these places where my spirit got shattered and broken, and to love myself through it. And so I did a lot of work on releasing all the anger and resentment towards the drunk driver that killed my friend and left me, I hate the word disabled. I hate that word. That left me wounded. And we did a very profound piece of codependent work on channeling the drunk driver's spirit and me being able to release her from my energy field, and release her out of that stuck vision that I had of her with a, you know, a very blank face on. And hopefully that sent her spirit off to go wherever it's meant to go, because she died immediately also. And I feel relief. I feel relief from that. So that was when I was 19. I lost all of that when I was 19. And I was pretty heavy into my addiction. And I believed that I was going to die if that didn't happen. And that's what I've come to believe about myself, that I would die. I was going to die of addiction. I was that desolate. So going back to childhood, I know I'm going to skip around here a little bit, but childhood, I was born and given up for adoption and withdrawing from drugs at, I was born only 5 pounds and given up and withdrawing from drugs, and I was drugged for my infancy. And that in and of itself, I always thought, well, hey, I just got parents, you know what I mean? Like I don't know any other way to be, right? Like I don't have feelings about that. I have great parents. No, you got to write your story out. Okay, great. Let's write that one out. Oh my God. Talk about the pain of being left at birth and needing your birth mother there for mirroring, for your identity, like so much. Boom. I'm into the pain that came out. Like I felt like something got ripped, like skin ripped off of my chest. Like I couldn't even breathe. It was amazing. Like, and through these, releasing these traumas and coming through the pain makes me so close to God and my higher power that I have ever felt before in this connection, that it's like I have reached this connection, and this light is profound. Pain is profound. Embracing pain. When you embrace your pain, it leads to healing. And when you oppress it, it leads to suffering. And I embraced my pain that day, and I grieved and grieved. I remember my sponsor said, she's held me a few times and like held me through it, rubbed my hair, told me the things that I needed to hear when you're born as an infant, like welcome to the world, you know, things that I didn't get. And it causes so much pain because these are things that I just never believed that I could have, these connections and this love. And to let her love me, it's amazing. And the woman is amazing. I love my sponsor. Sponsorship is so important and so sacred. And she just say, it's going to be all right. I want you to hold your bear and listen to lullaby music. And that music, oh my gosh, was painful. And love yourself through all of this and give it all to your higher power. So I had 2 amazing parents that we grew up in upstate New York, and they were codependent. My mom, she is a caretaker, and she did everything for me. You know, she talked for me, she dressed me, she, you know, she did everything for me. And so I feel like I didn't really get to learn by making mistakes and doing things on my own. And my father was like an avoidant, and he would just like, you know, golf or watch TV. And so, you know, I grew up with kids saying to me, you know, what was so wrong with you that your parent or your mom would just give you away? Like, what was so wrong with you? Or you're really not our cousin. Like, you're really not family. And I would just visualize, and I started fantasy immediately, and I would visualize like what I needed to be, what I needed to look like to be accepted and loved. And I remember I'm like, subconsciously, I was like, they've got to be looking for me. My parents are out there looking for me. And I remember leaving my house. I remember leaving my house as a little girl at like 6 years old in the middle of the night, running down the street, running, like looking into these houses, like where are they? Where are they? And all the houses were black and dark and no lights. It was desolate. My spirit was desolate and broken and lost, shattered all over the place, everywhere. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I don't have anywhere to go. Like, I have to go back home. Oh, I couldn't freaking catch a break, and I just wanted to die. Like, I just wanted to die. I did not want to live. This is it. And then when drugs and alcohol came around at like 15, hell yeah. That was the feeling I was looking for my entire life, and drugs and alcohol saved my life until it didn't. Until it did not save my life anymore. And my addiction got to be so bad to where I feel like my car accident was there to save my life. And if I don't surrender, my higher power is going to cause a surrender to me. The truth will come out, like the surrender will happen. If I don't surrender myself, it's always going to happen. It came, and it took close to 2 years to walk again. We moved out to Arizona in 2003. My addiction took off, and I got clean. And I had zero identity. I had no idea who I was, what I liked, what I didn't. I just learned from TV shows about what life looks like, and it's all just a fantasy. You know, I grew up on Disney. It's all just like Snow White getting raped by pedophiles in the woods, and oh my gosh, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Like, it's just insane. I didn't have anybody to teach me, like, no, that's just not life. So here I am thinking like my life is going to play out like the movies, and it just didn't. And I, got to a bottom. Thank God for bottoms in that moment of clarity. Like, wow. And I have not had a drink, and alcohol is my drug of choice. And I have not drank in over 8 years, and I'm so proud of myself. Yay! I can see you guys waving at me. Oh, I like to see you guys. I haven't had a drink, and this last 5 years of my Coda recovery have been amazing. I have been able to sponsor women, and I have a sponsor. I applied for disability because my work had gotten to the point where it was unmanageable, and I was unreliable when I would be able to, like, there's days during the week I can't walk. Like yesterday, I could barely walk, like my ankle kept giving out, and I could barely walk yesterday. And I have some sadness about that. It's so amazing to feel feelings, because like we're in this weird world where like I'm in my house by myself. Like I don't go into person to share in meetings or go out into public. I mean, we're in like the hot spot for COVID. I personally don't feel comfortable. I'm totally fine just staying here, but like it's so awesome to be able to feel these feelings now and to be in a safe place to feel them. So thank you guys. Yeah, so yesterday was a hard day. Like my right ankle kept giving out. And so I went into shame around applying for disability. Like, oh my God, no one's going to want you because you're on, who wants somebody on disability? Like, but I applied for it, and I'm actually able to help my friend's business out doing some internet marketing for them when I can, like when I can. So it's like I can work from home. And so I feel a little bit more esteemed in that area. And I'm still not dating anybody. I had, oh gosh, you guys. So, oh, I forgot to tell you this. So I I take a DNA test last year and I find out who my first cousin is. I was like, oh my God, one of his aunts or uncles is my birth parent. Oh shit, it's right here. What am I gonna do? Okay, so I reach out. Long story short, his uncle is my father, my birth father. I reached out to him and he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You have no idea how much I wanted a daughter, and I can't wait to meet you. He lives in Vegas. Him and his wife came out to visit me and my mom, since my dad had passed back in 2018. It's weird because like my dad died and then all of a sudden another father pops up. Like my birth father pops up and I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie. Okay, so this guy's here now. Okay, great. So he comes out, oh my gosh, this is gonna be amazing. I cannot wait to meet you. We're gonna go to the spa, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And oh my gosh, I've always wanted a daughter, yada, yada, yada. So I meet him, he comes out, we look identical. We're just alike, our energy is so much alike. And it was like, great, like, wow. So then I go to Vegas to meet my brother for Christmas, okay? So I'm in Vegas and now I'm at the house and we come home and his wife is standing with a butcher knife saying, I am jealous of you and my husband. I want your relationship and I am jealous of you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I only met this man twice in my life. Like, how are you jealous? Like, you want him to be your father? Like, turns out she thinks that I'm his other woman, that I am in a sexual relationship with my father. This is what this woman believes. And it progressed to the point where I was like, I can't have this woman in my life. Like this is just not healthy for me. And I don't want that energy. I feel like it's just gonna, it's toxic energy. And I just choose not to have that today. So, oh my gosh. So anyway, so he's like, well, I'm gonna get a divorce. Okay, great. So he comes out to Phoenix and he stays with me for a little bit. And he ends up getting back together with her and leaving here in a fit of rage. And where it's at currently is that she feels that I am my birth father's significant other, mistress, if you will. I'm like, gosh, you guys need to go over there and work out your marriage. Like, I don't want this in my life. So I haven't talked to him in months, and that's okay. I find out who my birth mother is. I haven't reached out to her yet. I don't really feel very connected, but I must tell you that this has made my relationship with my mother so strong and so connected. I finally have a good relationship with my mother now, like, and that is amazing to me. I love my mother. And I used to, oh my gosh, we would butt heads. And I can't believe, like, we see each other like 4 times a week or more. And it's amazing. It's like a weird sci-fi movie. I swear, it's like, I have no, like, I can safely say, like, next year at this point, I might be somewhere on top of a mountain, who knows doing what. Like, my life has changed so drastically. But all I can say is that working a program, staying connected, talking to, like, sharing my truth and staying honest and working my steps is something I need to put first and foremost in my life. Like, my life depends on it. I feel like codependency is the #1 killer. It leads to car accident, or it could lead to car accidents, but heart attacks, war. I believe war is over codependency and the shame and fear. It's an addiction to shame and fear and excitement. And the chemicals that get released in my body when I go into a fantasy addiction, an excitement addiction, or a fear addiction. It's cortisol, it is adrenaline, and it gets secreted into my bloodstream, and I'm no longer able to feel pain when that happens, and I'm addicted to it. And then after I get high, which I don't even need a drug to get high anymore. I just need my codependency. Then after that, the withdrawal always happens, and that withdrawal happens into a shame spiral. because I placed that thing, that my fantasy or whatever it is, I placed that before my higher power, and I gave it the power to be my higher power. And I feel like that's a lot of the transference from higher power to fantasy. Like, I need to separate those two and get them unenmeshed. I learned about boundaries. I learned that I'm amazing. I am one of a kind, and there's no other person out there that's like me. I am valuable. Every one of you is valuable. Every one of you is a divine masterpiece. Like, there is no other one of you out there at all. That's it. That's just you. It's amazing. You guys are amazing. I'm amazing. We all have good. We all have dark. We all have light. We all have shit. We all have success, ups and downs, and everything. We all have it, and we're all equal. We're all one. And I learned all these amazing affirmations about myself. I learned, gosh, the gifts of recovery. Like, I've learned how to parent myself, how to self-talk, and how to work myself out of shame spirals and fear spirals. I've learned how to esteem myself, self-care. I learned how to get back inside of my body. And I'm learning to love my body. I still struggle with my food addiction. And I struggle, it's not so much the food addiction, it's the cycle that is addictive. It's this addictive cycle where it is excitement, and then after this excitement wears off, then I get bored, and then I'm like, oh, I don't think I want to do this anymore, and then I start changing, and I kind of like leave this here, and then I go down, then I start to go downhill so that I could come back up again. And so I'm trying to get more in the middle instead of having it be so up and down. And addicted to these highs and lows, binge, neglect, excitement, fear. And so I'm learning balance. And so it's a constant battle for me. Like, there's like this line of power, like our second step talks about. Like, there's this line of power where power is like in the middle, and I'm always engaged with power, whether it's one up, one down, or in the middle. I'm somewhere in feeling this level of power. So it's either I give my power away and I'm small and I give it away to something else that isn't my higher power and I'm less than, or I can go up and be more than and become this power. And so I feel like God's will, and I feel like reality and truth and honesty is like in the middle, where this where that's where the light is, and that's where my higher power is. And so I'm constantly assessing, like, am I one up, one down? How do I feel? Like, am I little? Am I my teenager? Am I in my critical parent? And then I can neutralize that by, my awareness around it. Just like a quick 10-step inventory around it. And that's been pretty helpful. And so Sharon and I were talking about, like, we find the speakers. We're the girls that go out and find you guys all the speakers. We're like, oh shit, like, no one's asked us, because we do it, right, Sharon? Like, we are the ones that just, like, because that's us. Like, I can't just say, hey, Christina. So, but I wanted to share that I have a workshop that I am going to be proposing, and hopefully will roll out for you guys. I'm calling it Coming Out of Denial, Breaking Fantasy Bonds. And it's going to be around the story, around my fantasy, around getting into more like deeper around like my birth father and the fantasy around that. So I'm nervous because I have not done a workshop. I've shared, but I haven't. Well, I've done the vision board workshop. Okay, I lied. I helped Ellen with the boundaries workshop, but this is like my very own baby, my creation. So I'm excited to do that. And I love helping empower women and people to become just amazing. I love being encouraging. I love my friendships today. I'm starting a tradition study tomorrow with some amazing people that I love a lot in my life. And we're going to work the relationship toolkit together, and hopefully we'll get to grow more intimate together and learn about each other and learn about how to apply traditions into our relationships so that we're all in this together. And I love my committee, our committee. I love all of you guys. You guys are amazing. And gosh, there's so much, but I do want to leave time for you guys to share. You guys can always contact me at eventschair@gmail.com, and we're looking for speakers for August, September. Hopefully we're going to do Zoom all the way. Hopefully we're not going to discontinue Zoom. Like, we love it. And so please let me know if you want to share your story. Everybody has a story. And a workshop, it doesn't have to be a workshop. It could be just, you know, like how I shared today. Let us get to know you guys. And I'm currently on my 4th step, along with doing the 12-step toolkit. And I love being a sponsor. I love being sponsored. I love, gosh, I just love all kinds of, so anyways, real quick, I love my body. I love my body 30-day challenge. And here is my blank board. I'm starting today. And so I've got July, August, and September. And so my reward is I get to go on vacation with my bestie. I don't know where we can go with COVID and everything like that. I was hoping for Hawaii, but I doubt it since we have to self-quarantine. But I'm starting that, and I hope to, through this transformation process, I really hope to learn about my body. I'll learn about loving my body and self-care and pay more attention to it. And so, yeah, and so, I mean, I'm doing good. I'm on, you know, I don't know why I wanted to say this, but I'm on social media. If you guys want to be my friend, you can. I wasn't going to say that, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll just say it. Like, if you want to be my friend, you can. You can. It's Christina Marie. Oh my gosh, I'm so silly. I wasn't planning on saying that, but anyway, I just did. And that's it. I thank you for letting me share.